So, good day. Yeah, you all know, and we already heard it quite often today, so the automotive space is changing, and yes, it's true. So it's not only like new competition like Tesla and NIO entering our markets, it's also like that the whole sector is changing from like traditional manufacturers, like putting more and more focus on the brands and the experience customers makes with their brands. So this is also where we are driven by, and why we are also like trying to find ways to improve this customer experience and this customer engagement with our brand. And we are not only exploring it as the Škoda brand, we are also exploring it like within the Volkswagen group together with the others, and we do it with an experienced tech partner, which is IBM. So therefore it's also the reason why Agata and I stand together today here on stage. So starting about like the strong brand, and I see we don't have the timer anymore, but just to give you the intro, it's important for us as Skoda that we want to be more than just the classical manufacturer. We want to provide like modern, accessible solutions with everything you need and also surprises you love. And the important thing is we are a big corporate organization, so whatever like we try to push forward and invention we try to bring into the organization, we also have, of course, to convince our internal stakeholders. So we need to find arguments and reasons how those new technologies and new services actually help our brand to improve and to make our business better. And the key values we are driven by, and this is also to keep in mind when we are thinking about new services, new products, is that we want to be human. We also want to make our customers' life simpler and easier. And at the end, we want to surprise them with new services in the daily experience of the brand. And what it means for Web3, I will come to in a second. So besides us as a brand and more focusing on the brilliant experience, we see that the whole sector, the whole automotive sector is changing. So we know that autonomous driving is moving forward. We are waiting for it. Of course, not as fast as always thought, but in general, we can say like the sector is getting more autonomous in the future. The cars are getting more electrified. Of course, they are getting more connected. We have much more technical enablers and data collectors with us. And at the same time, automotive industry has the huge need to search for additional revenue models, because like the classical conventional manufacturing of the cars is not saving the business as it did the last years. And at the same time, we also see that our customers expect exactly that from us as a brand while interacting with us. Customers want to know what is happening with their data. They don't want just to sit in the car and have the feeling that they get spied. They want to have like digital services which are not only affected to like one specific brand, but also if they are, for example, on their holiday trip getting a car rental, driving the same brand or even another brand, they don't want to like enroll there from the very beginning anymore. They want to have like a seamless integration of different services. And this is a huge benefit and can be a huge benefit for a brand as us to really differentiate in the future from others. And this is actually like the key motivation why we as Škoda said it's worth to step into the space and also like to set up new business concepts for us to explore.
Right, and this sort of goes in line with what's happening in the internet space more generally. So we all know these buzzwords, Web3, Web2, and I think it's worthwhile unpacking this a little bit. I know that we have a diverse audience and not everybody sort of feels comfortable with these terms. And then we understand Web3 in very loose terms as a sort of umbrella term or as a promise or sets of expectations about the internet and that it can be operating differently to how it's been operating for now. And by that we mean that maybe there is a more equitable, a fairer way of sharing data, and maybe there is a way for internet users to participate in the data economy as well. And in particular, that means that an internet user could potentially also participate in data monetization. So rather than as it is in the so-called Web2 trend, us, participants of the internet, giving away lots of data, also some sensitive data about ourselves to large data platforms operators, maybe there could be an alternative where we at least, at the minimum, get something out of it and also are at an equal partner. So Web3 is sort of like a leveling field for the internet. And in order for this to happen, there must be, first of all, the right infrastructure and some key enablers. there was a lot of talk already about digital identity, and that's one of the key factors that will make this Web3 work. So this is absolutely fundamental. 2, we need new ways of storing and transferring value, and tokenization can serve that purpose. And 3, we need new payment rails, efficient and fast, peer-to-peer, that will enable this transaction system within that new type of an economy. For enterprises, this is a very difficult space. We're talking about decentralization as the key ecosystem in which these transactions, this economy will operate in. And for enterprises, this is a new space. So traditionally, enterprises operate in a model of the winner takes all. So they want to grab the biggest share of the market and reap the benefits of it. But as Hannes just said, this is changing. Industries need to reinvent themselves, and they're also looking for ways to empower their users and change that business model to make space for the ecosystem partners, as Raquel said. And that's why we think that these ongoing trends in the automotive industry and in the web more generally make for a very good fit between automotive and Web3 principles, and Skoda is exploring that.
Okay, and so what does it mean for us as a brand? If you remember the 3 principles of our key values, so if you think about like being a human brand and like bringing human interaction to our customers, like a key topic for us is the topic of data trust. We want to give, like with new digital ways of ownership, actually the opportunity to give our customers the opportunity to control the data much better and in a more transparent way as they are able to do today. And of course, also like to give them the transparency with whom, at what stage they are actually sharing their identity and their personal information while interacting with partners. Simplifying. A huge challenge for us today is while integrating third-party services. So we know like every one of us is like whoever has a car, or even if he doesn't own a car, is also just sharing. We are always interacting with several third parties, starting from the gas station, charging stations, parking slots. Everyone who buys a car needs to register it. Everyone who buys a car needs to find an insurance partner. So there are several steps in like your customer experience connected to your car, whatever brand, where you have to exchange personalized data, get enrolled, exchange this data. You brought earlier the example with Uber. This is exactly the point. Like at every stage, you have to exchange several data. So we want to find a way and like becoming part of a platform where we actually are able to interconnect with third parties in a much more efficient and also like more seamless way for our customers in order to bring this more seamless, more easier customer experience to them. And last but not least, this is what we see as a competitive advantage if we look to our other brands and competition. Like in the second, we can provide services which they don't expect from the traditional business of an OEM. Like it's an advantage, a competitive advantage we would have besides being a traditional manufacturer. And looking at this, we were speaking about like several third parties, and it's pretty clear that this just becomes true and clear with scale of the ecosystem. It doesn't help just to onboard like single partners into like a Škoda ecosystem. At the end, we have to find like a common agreement and a technological platform where we are able to scale over several different platforms. Only then such a concept can be beneficial.
And it's interesting because it's a very similar slide to the one that Raquel showed about building an ecosystem, and it makes sense. This is the direction that enterprises are understanding they need to be going towards, but it is very difficult to build this from bottom up, from an enterprise perspective, to enter the space of decentralization. And we're not talking about permissioned blockchain decentralization. We're talking about fully permissionless, open ecosystem. And I know that there is strong link between, association between Hyperledger, IBM, you know, that we work with these permission networks. We understand the need to really make those Web3 promises come true, or expectations come true, that we also need to be opening up to totally permissionless and open protocols. So Hannes showed the big picture, you know, how do we build this ecosystem of collaboration between third parties? How do we build that collective value that Raquel was talking about? But we're starting from a point where we're thinking how to build foundations of all that. So how can we make or encourage an enterprise of massive scale like Skoda to slowly enter this Web3 space in a way that is compliant, that shows the potential, but that does not totally disrupt everything upside down, because it is very tricky from an enterprise angle. So for what we're thinking about now is how to build foundations for a marketplace, for a data marketplace, and connect the third parties, so the data consumers, with the drivers who are the data providers. But do it in a way, as I mentioned to begin with, that rewards the data providers for doing so. And to do that, we need this incentivization and engagement system that we talked about before, and Raquel and Maria talked about that. And an enabler of that will be a system of tokenization. So we're thinking of, to begin with, a utility token that will work as an internal currency, like digital system for settling transactions in this ecosystem. This economy should be fully autonomous and programmable, and should be giving the third parties enough incentive as well also to participate in this ecosystem. To do that, we are now we're thinking of infrastructure that can handle that economy. And there are different pieces of this infrastructure that make it possible. So on the one hand, we have a car wallet. So Raquel was talking about the economy of devices, of things. Also, a vehicle should have these capabilities of having its own identity. Secondly, we need to distinguish, according to the Web3 principles, between the data that belongs to the car and the data that belongs to the user, and should be under the control and ownership of the user. And to do this, we need some sort of wallet that will handle the data, the assets, so the tokens, and potentially in the future also the credentials, some identity credentials that belong to the user, that by design should be transferable as well. So the user has this possibility at some point to apply the different assets and a different credential also in a different context, of course, ideally outside of the Skoda ecosystem. And we need some sort of interface as well that the third parties can connect to and come to consume this data. So laying down the principles is the biggest layer, laying down the business model and the revenue model of that data economy, and laying down the infrastructure is what needs to happen to make this work. We are conceptualizing of a number of use cases that could fit this infrastructure and this data economy that Hannes will mention now.
And like one of the use cases example is actually if you look to the insurance sector, where today we have services already live today for some insurances which are called pay as you drive or pay how you drive, where your driving behavior is measured to put you into a risk category. So how risky are you actually driving? But the issue with that, the data which is collected is super sensitive. People are of course like sensitive about the data when they are sharing, and of course they are afraid of, in the case I'm speeding or in the case I'm not behaving right, or someone else is driving my car, I would actually get penalized for that. So the starting point of our journey is to say, okay, we want to enable the customers with like a clear like data management where they can agree on at what time, with whom, with which third party they are actually exchanging the data. Not based on a general third-party consent, as most of the industries does it today, but with like really like a data management of saying with whom do I share what data. In order to motivate the customer, we could incentivize him. Incentivize him with like a loyalty token, with some assets in the Škoda ecosystem, which he later at some other stage can utilize. But actually, we can motivate the customer to be willing to join the platform and also to become a member to share the data. With that, we as Škoda at the end can interact as a kind of a matchmaker in both sides. We can on the one side, based on the information of the customer, can say, okay, there's, based on your driving behavior, there are the top 5 insurance contracts which might be based on your driving behavior more beneficial for you price-wise. But also on the other way around, you could actually create leads for the insurance company saying, hey, this is the pool of Škoda drivers, which most likely is not part of your customers. We can bring you as a matchmaker the opportunity to generate a lead from the insurer to the user and actually ask for this interaction. So therefore, in this model, we would be beneficial and be the matchmaker between the insurance partner and our customers, and hope for this huge race of efficiencies based to the technology platform where we interact or where we manage the behaviors between each other partners based on smart contracts. So this is one concept we are thinking about, but with that also many open questions arise, and this is also how we would like to finish our talk.
Mm-hmm. There's of course tremendous value that comes to different stakeholders, even in this foundational model, although that belongs to a different context right now, that phrase. But for third parties, of course, they're tapping into the scale and the data that Škoda already have. For the user, they're getting rewards, they're tapping into the data monetization. And for the Škoda, it's an opportunity to facilitate the entire ecosystem, including the token exchange. But this foundation that we're building right now, it still somehow belongs to this Web 2.5, if we were to really use those labels of and the continuum of webs that we're building. So if we really want to push it to the next level, ideally we want to tap into, from the Škoda perspective, build this ecosystem, so make different data sets communicate with each other. Maria mentioned that as well, about how different data models can be used for some exciting new use cases. And this is the direction. But in order to do that, you need to design that collective value for everyone. So what's in it for different third parties that are coming in for this data? How to encourage them to build this collaborative ecosystem together? And then also a very important point, how to build a governance layer that regulates that ecosystem. The enterprise tries of building that governance around a blockchain network so far have been very difficult and mostly unsuccessful. So this is a very, very tricky thing, and we'll be talking about that later today as well in the panel discussion. Then, of course, as the ecosystem grows, as the user becomes more empowered, as more partners join this ecosystem, then there must be a cutoff point for an enterprise to let go of that control, right? So how much can we actually facilitate as an enterprise? Where does our control stop? And enterprises like to control a lot and as much as possible. And then related to that is also, okay, so if we really want to build this decentralized environment, you want to use a blockchain protocol for that, there must be certain capabilities of that blockchain network that can handle, first of all, the scalability that comes with a huge enterprise like Škoda and its fleet, the speed, the transaction fees, and also there is the element of course, privacy and security of such a network, taking accountability, which is a crucial thing that enterprises deal with right now, and that's why they're so reluctant to go into permissionless blockchain. It's not because they don't like Ethereum or Bitcoin. And then there is this, of course, the role of the token. So we can start from a utility token perspective, but you might say, okay, like this looks a lot like a loyalty point. You know, we already have that. We can do that without the blockchain. But you could push that a bit further. You can use a token as a form of a DAO, you know, so we're talking about that programmable governance. You can use tokens for that in the future as well. It's a very complex, and to replace that, let's say, consortium model that's been a bit tricky to build as well and mostly unsuccessful. And then you can push it even further and open up that token economy out there, you know, and give the users possibility to exchange their Škoda tokens for different type of tokens, even, you know, cryptocurrency. And that's, right now, from an enterprise perspective, it is very, very, very difficult, if not impossible. But this is where this is going. This is the true Web3 stuff.
On the other hand, there's also like one huge benefit for us, and this is really mind-changing for us as an industry, is the direct customer interaction becomes much more possible compared to today. Also, like, if we today already know who is actually the driver of the car, it's good. We quite often don't know. But when we lose the latest contact to our customers is like when the car is changing its owner, so if it's in the second or third ownership. So actually like getting the opportunity as a manufacturer to interact with your users and drivers over lifetime and knowing who is driving it at what time is a huge benefit, which brings like many new use cases and also of course like opportunities to interact with the customer. But with that, we are pretty fast like jumping to like legal requirements and new challenges and new questions connected to that, which are still like which are not answered and which we're exploring currently. Another huge benefit which we see in the technology is actually the authenticity verification of our users. If you think about the example of social media posts where people are complaining about the vehicle, like we quite often don't know like if this is actually a member or a Skoda driver. Actually, everyone can put this information there, but like having the authentication of users, if they are really like owning a car, which at what stage, or if they are part of this overall Skoda ecosystem, can be a huge benefit. Also, if you think about managing loyalty clubs or actually incentivize users for being long-term customers or activating or participating on like marketing events, and then giving them specific access to like Skoda loyalty clubs where they can become part of the product development. So it's actually a huge benefit to manage your own communities and actually realize the authenticity of your users as part of this community. And with that, also looking to the time, we have, I guess, time for one question, but we would like to thank for your attention, and we are now at the end. Correct?
Should we use our line from ChatGPT? We actually...
Yeah, of course, like as most of the people, I guess, we also like use ChatGPT a bit to challenge ourselves for this presentation. And actually a very smart sentence, and it's true. Like when we are entering the space, and this also describes how we as Skoda ended up in it, it's not about trying to survive in the new space. So we all know Web3 is coming and we see more and more elements joining the space. So it's not about surviving the space. It's actually the question for us as a traditional OEM, how can we strive through that space? So how can we actually develop a new way of thinking? How can we actually access or find answers to new challenges? And therefore, like it's pretty fantastic to push this forward also from the Skoda perspective, because we know the space is changing, so we have to find those answers. And with that, I guess we can close.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.